Marcus burst through my office door without knocking, his face glowing with pure euphoria. I was deep in a heated call with London investors about our $500 million acquisition, but the sight of my son's breathless excitement made me instantly end the conversation. "Gentlemen, we'll continue this tomorrow." I clicked off the conference system. "Mom, I'm engaged," Marcus practically shouted, thrusting his left hand toward me. The platinum band caught the afternoon light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting tiny reflections across my mahogany desk. My Mont Blanc pen froze mid-click. "Engaged." The word felt foreign on my tongue. When did this happen? "Yesterday, Elena proposed at Millennium Park during lunch. It was perfect, Mom. She had a whole speech prepared about our future together." He collapsed into the client chair across from my desk, his designer jeans and cashmere sweater a stark contrast to the corporate atmosphere. I studied his face carefully. Marcus had mentioned Elena sporadically over the past 6 months, but I knew almost nothing about her beyond her first name and her occupation. "Tell me about her again." Elena Morrison. "She works in investment banking at Steinberg and Associates. She's amazing, Mom. Ambitious, charming, everything I've ever wanted." His nervous laugh made me lean forward. "And her family." Something flickered across his expression. "They're lovely people. Actually, that's why I'm here." He twisted the engagement ring around his finger. "They've invited us for dinner tonight at 6 o'clock. Elena wants to meet you properly. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you." I moved to the window, watching Chicago buzz 47 floors below. "What aren't you telling me, sweetheart?" Marcus avoided my gaze. "It's just, could you maybe not mention the company or the Forbes articles?" There it was, the request I'd been expecting since Marcus turned 18 and started dating. "Hide the wealth. Pretend to be ordinary. Elena's parents are very down-to-earth, and I don't want them to feel intimidated," he explained. "You want me to lie about who I am?" My voice was colder than I intended. "Not lie exactly," he pleaded. "Just downplay things. Drive the Camry instead of the Mercedes. Wear something casual." His voice carried that same pleading tone I hadn't heard since he was 12 and wanted a puppy. I returned to my desk, my gaze falling on the silver Tiffany frame holding Jonathan's photo. His wisdom echoed in my mind, a familiar guidepost in moments of uncertainty. Character shows when people think nobody important is watching. My late husband, my brilliant Jonathan, had always been the better judge of people. He saw the core of a person while I saw the potential of a deal. Money doesn't change who someone is, Vivian, it just reveals it. "Marcus, if this woman truly loves you, shouldn't she accept all aspects of your life?" I asked, my voice softer now. "She does love me, but first impressions matter, and Elena's family values hard work and honesty. They might think I'm some spoiled rich kid if they knew." The irony wasn't lost on me. He wanted to build a foundation of honesty on a bed of deception. But this wasn't about me. It was a chance to see Elena Morrison for who she truly was, without the blinding glare of a multi-billion-dollar fortune. It was a test. "All right, Marcus, I'll do it your way." His face lit up as he stood and kissed my forehead. "Thank you for understanding, Mom. This means everything to me." We're meeting at their house, 847 South Ashland Avenue, 6 o'clock sharp. After he left, I stared at the address on my notepad. The wheels in my mind began turning, remembering Jonathan's wisdom about character revealing itself when people think nobody important is watching. Perhaps it was time for a different kind of test. I loosened my silk scarf. The weight of Marcus's request settled over me like a familiar burden. The drive to my penthouse on Lakeshore Drive gave me time to think. The familiar elegance of the city couldn't calm the storm brewing in my chest. Marcus deserved happiness, but he also deserved protection from those who might see him as a prize rather than a person. Inside my 3,000-square-foot sanctuary overlooking Lake Michigan, I found myself gravitating toward Jonathan's watchbox on the bedroom dresser. His wedding band still lay in its velvet slot, a modest gold ring I'd saved 3 months to afford. He'd loved it more than any diamond I could buy him later. This was about authenticity, something Elena Morrison was about to be tested on. In my walk-in closet, behind rows of custom-tailored suits and designer dresses, hung a garment I'd almost forgotten existed. A cheap pantsuit purchased years ago from Target for a charity event. I'd worn it once, hating every polyester thread, but kept it as a reminder of a different world. Now it might serve a greater purpose. The polyester suit felt strange against my skin after years of silk and cashmere. It clung where fine fabric would flow. The slightly wrinkled material speaking of storage rather than care. Standing before my bedroom mirror, I methodically transformed myself. The Cartier watch came off first, its intricate craftsmanship a symbol of the world I was leaving behind. I replaced it with a $25 Timex with a leather band that showed the wrong time zone. My Hermes handbag gave way to a worn canvas tote I'd borrowed from the building's housekeeping staff. The iPhone 15 Pro went into my safe, replaced by an ancient Samsung that barely held a charge. I practiced softening my posture slightly, shortening my stride, and adjusting my voice to match the working-class accent I'd heard from service workers over the years. Vivian Hartwell, retired social worker, I murmured to my reflection. Modest pension, proud of my son's success. Jonathan's watchbox sat silently as I removed the platinum credit cards from my wallet, keeping only a basic debit card and $47 in cash. The transformation felt both theatrical and deeply personal. Stripping away layers of wealth to reveal something closer to my origins, the elevator descended to the garage level where James, our 60-year-old building manager, was reviewing evening deliveries. His eyes widened when he saw me, his professional training battling obvious confusion. "Good evening, Mrs. Hartwell. Will you be needing the Mercedes tonight?" His voice carried 20 years of discretion. "The Camry, actually," I said, pulling out the keys to the 2010 Toyota. James's face remained perfectly neutral despite the bizarre request. "Of course, ma'am," he said. "Shall I warm it up for you?" "That's not necessary, James. Just if anyone asks. You didn't see me leave in anything unusual tonight." James nodded solemnly. "I rarely see anything unusual, Mrs. Hartwell. Have a pleasant evening." The Camry's interior smelled of vanilla air freshener and worn fabric. Compared to my other vehicles, it felt like stepping into a different life entirely. The AM/FM radio crackled to life, playing gospel music instead of the satellite news I was accustomed to. I adjusted the rearview mirror and caught my reflection again. The silk press was a flaw in the costume, but everything else screamed ordinary middle-class American. The kind of woman Elena Morrison's family would either welcome warmly or dismiss entirely. The GPS navigation spoke in its mechanical voice. "Proceed to 847 South Ashland Avenue. Estimated travel time, 25 minutes. 25 minutes to cross, not just neighborhoods but entire social worlds." I gripped the Camry's worn steering wheel and pulled out of the garage, leaving my real life behind in the shadows of Lakeshore Drive. The expressway stretched ahead, carrying me toward what might be the most important performance of my life, not for business, but for the only thing that truly mattered, Marcus's future happiness. The Toyota's engine ticked softly as I squeezed into a parking space between a Tesla Model S and a BMW X5. 847 South Ashland Avenue looked exactly as I'd expected, a renovated Southside row house trying hard to project a success it hadn't quite achieved. The fresh paint on the front steps was slightly uneven, a sign of determined DIY work. My cheap Timex read exactly 6 p.m. The doorbell rang with an expensive chime, though I noticed it was mounted slightly crooked. Footsteps approached and the door swung open to reveal a woman who could only be Elena Morrison. "You must be Marcus's mother." Her smile was practiced, professional. "Elena Morrison, pleasure to meet you." Her handshake was firm but brief. I caught her discreetly wiping her palm on her slacks afterward. The $200 blouse she wore wasn't designer, but it was trying hard to look like it. Everything about her screamed calculated presentation. "Vivian Hartwell, thanks for having me over," I said, keeping my voice humble, adding just a touch of the Southside accent I'd practiced. Come in. Marcus has been telling us wonderful things about you." The interior hit me immediately. New furniture with that slight chemical smell of recent financing, decorative elements chosen from a department store catalog, and a massive TV dominating the living room, like a shrine to material priorities. "Mom, Dad, this is Vivian." Elena's voice carried toward the kitchen. Patricia Morrison appeared, wiping her hands on an apron with theatrical precision. Her scanning gaze took in my Target suit, scuffed shoes, and canvas tote in approximately 3 seconds. The smile that followed didn't quite reach her eyes. "How lovely to meet you, Vivian. I hope you found the place all right." "GPS got me here just fine, ma'am." "Beautiful neighborhood you've got." "Well, it's certainly up and coming," she said, her tone suggesting she considered herself instrumental in that improvement. Robert Morrison emerged from the living room, offering a perfunctory nod in my direction before focusing entirely on Marcus, who had just appeared from the kitchen. "Marcus, young man, you look great. Engagement suits you." I watched the family dynamics unfold like a carefully choreographed performance. "Please sit down," Patricia gestured toward what was obviously the least comfortable chair, the one with the slightly wobbly leg that guests got stuck with. So, Vivian, Elena settled into her obvious favorite chair, establishing dominance. Marcus mentioned you're retired. What line of work were you in? Social work mostly. Did some community organizing too. I shifted uncomfortably in the wobbly chair, staying true to character. Honest work. You know. Elena's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, the look of a woman confirming her assumptions about social hierarchy. Ah, public service. Very noble. The condescension in that word was perfectly calibrated. Not quite an insult, but definitely a categorization. As we moved to the dining room, I caught Elena's satisfied expression reflected in a darkened window. She thought she'd successfully established the pecking order. She had no idea how right she was, just not in the way she imagined. Patricia directed me to a chair that immediately wobbled under my weight. The dining room continued the theme of expensive-looking affordability. Elena uncorked a wine bottle with ceremonial precision. This is a 2019 Cabernet from Napa Valley. Excellent vintage, she explained, clearly directing her wine education at me. Sounds expensive, I offered, watching her pour. Robert raised his glass to Elena and Marcus's future together, and two families coming together despite different backgrounds. The toast hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus's face flushed, but he lifted his glass with the rest of us. So, Vivian, Elena began, cutting her roast with surgical precision. Retirement must be nice. No more dealing with troubled families, am I right? Had my share of difficult cases, that's for sure. I deliberately used the wrong fork for my salad. But honest work, absolutely. Elena agreed with the tone of someone humoring a child. Of course, in my line of work, we focus more on leveraging financial capital. Last week alone, I facilitated a merger worth $50,000 to our firm. I nodded respectfully, though internally I noted that $50,000 was pocket change for a normal business lunch in my world. Elena has such wonderful connections, Patricia chimed in. She dines at Elena regularly with clients. The irony wasn't lost on me. They were name-dropping a restaurant where I could buy out the entire establishment for the evening without checking my balance. Of course, once you're married, priorities change, Patricia added with meaningful emphasis to Marcus. Elena will provide, well, you might not need to work at all. Marcus's fork paused halfway to his mouth. I enjoy my career. Elena nodded sagely. Financial planning is crucial. Generational wealth doesn't build itself. She glanced at me. I imagine that's not something your family has much experience with, Vivian. Can't say it is, I agreed mildly, suppressing the urge to mention my portfolio could buy their entire neighborhood. That's why Marcus is so fortunate, Elena continued. He'll never have to worry about limitations again. The word limitations hit Marcus like a physical blow. His face went through a series of expressions. Confusion, hurt, then something approaching recognition. The evening was reaching its natural conclusion, but the real test was just beginning. After a tour of Robert's photo album featuring his prized 15-year-old Buick, Elena settled back into her chair with obvious satisfaction. Vivian, I want you to know, I take my responsibilities seriously. Marcus will never want for anything. Her tone carried the weight of a royal decree. I understand his background might make this transition challenging, but I'm committed to elevating his lifestyle appropriately. Marcus's sharp intake of breath was audible across the room. I'll make sure he has access to the right social circles, proper cultural experiences, Elena continued, oblivious to her fiancé's growing distress. Someone from his background couldn't be expected to navigate these waters alone. That was the moment Marcus's face truly changed. The love-struck optimism I'd seen all evening finally cracked, revealing something raw underneath. We should go, he said quietly, standing abruptly. Outside, the cool evening air carried the sounds of normal Southside life. Our Toyota looked even more shabby among the neighborhood's carefully curated vehicles. Marcus, I began gently. Don't. His voice was tight with controlled emotion. Just don't start. Did you hear the way she talked about you? About us? He whirled around, tears starting to form. She loves me, Mom. They're just there, protective of their family. Protective. I kept my voice calm despite the rage building inside. Sweetheart, that woman just spent 2 hours explaining how inadequate your mother is and how fortunate you are to escape your background. You don't understand. The words exploded out of him. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You judging them judging us, nobody giving anyone a real chance. I gave them a chance. I sat there for 2 hours while they insulted everything about who we are. Who we are. Marcus's laugh was bitter. Mom, you drove here in a 20-year-old car wearing a Target suit. That's not who we are. No, it's not, I said, the irony hitting like a physical blow. But Elena doesn't know that. And look how she treated me anyway. She was nervous. Meeting parents is stressful, he shot back, making excuses for her. Marcus, listen to yourself. You're making excuses for someone who just told the dinner table you're moving up in the world by marrying her. Maybe I am. His voice cracked. Maybe this is my chance to build something better. Better than what? Better than me? The question hung between us like a sword. His face crumpled, but his voice remained defiant. Better than hiding who I am because you think money corrupts everyone. Better than pretending to be something I'm not because you can't trust me to make my own decisions. Tears were flowing freely now. Mom, I'm 28 years old. I'm not your little boy anymore. And Elena is not some gold digger you need to test and approve. If you marry her, I said, my voice heavy with a certainty that chilled me, you'll spend the rest of your life apologizing for who you used to be. And if I don't, he retorted, his words a final devastating blow, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I gave up my happiness to make you feel better about being alone. His hand flew to his mouth, but it was too late. The words were out, and we both knew he had meant them. I'm sorry, he whispered. If you can't support my decision, he said, his voice hardening again, then maybe you shouldn't come to the wedding. He ran toward the house, his footsteps echoing off the concrete steps. The front door closed with a dreadful finality, leaving me alone under the streetlight beside my disguised car. Inside the Toyota, I sat in silence, the worn seats and cheap radio props in a performance that had revealed more truth than I'd bargained for. The test was over, but the real consequences were just beginning. The drive through Southside's changing streets felt like traveling between universes. I passed artisanal coffee shops and overpriced restaurants that Elena probably considered impressive, heading toward Lakeshore Drive, where the Chicago skyline waited like a reminder of who I really was. Traffic crawled, trapping me between worlds, literally and figuratively. Near the lake, I pulled into a scenic overlook and let the engine idle. Lake Michigan stretched below, Chicago's lights reflecting like scattered diamonds on the dark water. This was the view that had inspired me during my early struggling years. Back when I'd drive Jonathan here in my actual beat-up car to dream about the future, I pulled down the sun visor, revealing his photo tucked behind it. His smile looked back at me, patient and knowing. He hates me right now, I said to the photo, my voice barely audible over the traffic. Our son thinks I'm a controlling monster who can't stand his happiness. Jonathan's remembered voice seemed to whisper back, give him time, Vivian. Love doesn't disappear overnight, even when it's hurt. But what if I was wrong? What if I'd pushed too hard? Revealed Elena's character in a way that forced Marcus to choose sides. The look in his eyes as he ran back to that house wasn't just anger, it was disappointment in me. By the time I reached Lakeshore Drive, exhaustion was setting in. The garage attendant took my keys with legendary discretion. As if billionaires regularly returned home in 15-year-old Toyotas wearing Target suits, my key turned in the lock and I stepped back into my actual world, still wearing the clothes of a lie that had revealed an unbearable truth. I finally stripped off the polyester suit in my penthouse bedroom. Each piece of the costume, the cheap watch, the canvas tote, the scuffed shoes, seemed to carry the weight of the evening's revelations. My heart wasn't in any of it. My feeling was that Elena was a fraud, but feelings weren't enough. I couldn't destroy my son's happiness based on a gut instinct. I needed proof. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of professional obligations and personal torment. Board meetings continued, acquisition deals progressed, but my focus was gone. My assistant, Sarah, noticed immediately. Ma'am, the Henderson merger documents need your review, she'd say, then wait patiently while I stared out the window, seeing Marcus's angry face instead of the spring foliage along Lake Michigan. Starting May 18th, I called him every day, 3 times a day. His phone went straight to voicemail each time, the telltale sign of a blocked number. My messages grew increasingly desperate. Marcus, sweetheart, please call me back. We need to talk then. I know you're angry, but I love you. That hasn't changed. Finally, I just want you to be happy. That's all I've ever wanted. The flower delivery attempt on May 20th was equally futile. 3 dozen white roses, his favorite since childhood, were returned to the shop with a delivery refused notation. The handwritten note on my personal stationery came back unopened. Desperate for any connection, I found myself checking his Instagram account. He'd never made it private, probably never imagining his mother would resort to social media stalking. The posts were a catalog of wedding preparations, suit fittings, venue tastings, bachelor party photos with friends I'd watched grow up. Elena featured prominently in every image, her arm around Marcus's waist, her smile proprietary and satisfied. There were no mentions of me anywhere. It was as if I'd been completely erased from his wedding narrative. Each image was another dagger. One afternoon, a notification pinged on my encrypted email account, one I reserved for only the most sensitive corporate communications. The sender was anonymous, the subject line cryptic, regarding Elena Morrison. My heart hammered against my ribs. The message was brief. Ms. Morrison is not who she appears to be. I have information you may find valuable. If you want it, meet me at the west entrance of the Chicago Public Library tomorrow at 7 a.m. Come alone. I had Sarah, my ever-discreet assistant, run a trace on the email's origin. It was heavily masked, but the faint digital breadcrumbs led back to a server used by Steinberg and Associates. Someone on the inside was reaching out. The next morning, I stood by the main entrance, feeling more like a spy than a CEO. A young woman approached, her posture nervous, her eyes darting around the sparse crowd. She looked barely older than Marcus. "Mrs. Hartwell," she asked, her voice a nervous whisper. "You have me at a disadvantage. My name is Aisha Chen. I was a junior analyst at Steinberg. I was fired yesterday," she said, her gaze dropping to the pavement. "Look, I know this is weird, but I couldn't just let this happen. My family, we wouldn't have survived after my mom got sick if it wasn't for one of your foundation's grants. The Hartwell Education Initiative paid for my entire degree at Northwestern." I stared at her, stunned. One of the countless checks I'd signed, one of the programs Jonathan had championed, had just come back to me in the most unexpected way. When I saw the wedding announcement and your name connected to Elena Morrison, I knew I had to do something. Elena, she's a predator. Mrs. Hartwell, she targets people and she's in deep, deep trouble. "What kind of trouble?" "She's been cooking the books," Aisha said, her words spilling out in a rush. "Falsifying client portfolios to hide massive losses, promising returns she can't deliver. There's an internal investigation, and she knows she's about to be exposed. She's been bragging for months about landing a whale, a fiancé from an old money family who could solve all her problems. She thinks your family's wealth is her get-out-to-veal-free card." The pieces clicked into place. The condescension, the desperation to impress, the focus on elevating Marcus's lifestyle. It wasn't about social climbing. It was about survival. "Can you prove this?" I asked, my voice low and urgent. Aisha nodded, pulling a small encrypted USB drive from her pocket. "It's all here. The real portfolio numbers versus the ones she sent to clients. Internal emails where she discusses her strategy to secure a wealthy marriage. I made copies before they wiped my system." She handed me the drive. It felt heavy in my palm, the weight of incontrovertible proof. This was the weapon I needed. A quiet intervention. I could show this to Marcus, just the two of us. No public spectacle, no humiliation, just the cold, hard truth that would allow him to walk away with his dignity intact. "Thank you, Aisha," I said, my voice thick with gratitude. "You've done the right thing. I'll make sure you're taken care of." But the next evening, my phone rang with a frantic blocked number. It was I, her voice choked with panic. "She knows, Mrs. Hartwell. She knows I talked to you." "What happened?" "I don't know how, but she must have been watching me. She cornered me outside my apartment. She had this look in her eyes. She said she knew I'd copied the files. She smashed my phone, smashed the laptop I used and the drive. She took the original drive from my bag. She knows I gave you a copy." My blood ran cold. "Aisha, are you all right?" "She didn't hurt me, but she said if that information ever gets out, she'll make sure I never work in finance again. She said she'd ruin my family. Mrs. Hartwell, she destroyed the drive, the one I gave you." I froze. I hadn't made a copy. In my haste to handle the situation delicately, I had carried the sole piece of evidence in my briefcase, which was currently locked in my office safe. How could she have destroyed it? "I don't know. She said, your billionaire friend won't be able to use this now." She laughed about it. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I failed." She hadn't failed. I had underestimated Elena's paranoia and her ruthlessness. My quiet, elegant solution was gone. The advantage was lost. Elena had not only destroyed the evidence but had also drawn a line in the sand. She was calling my bluff, confident that without proof, it was my word against hers. And she knew Marcus would choose her. Cornered, with the evidence destroyed and no way to reach Marcus, I was backed into a corner. Elena's actions had made one thing clear. A quiet conversation was no longer an option. She had escalated this from a matter of character to a declaration of war. If a public confrontation was what she wanted, a public confrontation was what she would get. Sarah, I called my assistant the next morning, my voice stripped of all emotion. Get me the details for the Morrison Hartwell wedding. The Drake Hotel, June 5th. I need everything. Guest list, floor plan, vendor contracts, everything. Sarah's expression remained professionally neutral, but I caught the slight raise of her eyebrow. 20 years of working together had taught her when not to ask questions. By evening, she had a complete report. 200 guests, afternoon ceremony in the Gold Coast Ballroom, evening reception in the Grand Ballroom. Total cost approximately $150,000. Elena's contribution, $50,000 in cash, likely the check I had given Marcus, and $100,000 in credit obligations. She was leveraging her future with Marcus to pay for a wedding designed to impress people with money she didn't have. One more thing, Sarah, I said. Get me Bill Patterson's direct number at the Drake. We did that children's hospital benefit there last year. Shopping for my attire felt like preparing for battle. At Neiman Marcus, I selected a charcoal St. John's suit, an Italian silk scarf, and a new Cartier watch. These weren't just clothes, they were signals, accessories that would immediately identify me to anyone who understood wealth. No more costumes, no more hiding. The night before the wedding, I sat in my study with Jonathan's photo and a glass of 30-year-old cognac. He doesn't want me there, I told the image. He's made that clear. But Jonathan's smile seemed to say what he'd always said. Sometimes love means showing up when you're not wanted. On the morning of June 5th, I showered, styled my hair, and dressed with the precision of a general. The St. John's suit fit like a second skin. The Cartier caught the light from the window. In the mirror, I saw Vivian Hartwell as the world knew her. Successful, powerful, uncompromising. The kind of woman who didn't take no for an answer, especially from her own son. I called Bill Patterson. Vivian, congratulations on Marcus's wedding. I assume you'll be needing our VIP service today. Actually, Bill, I said, my voice calm and steady. I need a different kind of favor. The black Mercedes S-Class limousine pulled up to the Drake's entrance with whispered precision. My chauffeur, uniformed and white-gloved, opened the door with practiced deference. Stepping onto the sidewalk, I felt the weight of my authentic self. The $5,000 St. John's suit, the Cartier gleaming at my wrist, the Italian leather heels reflecting the hotel's legendary marble. The transformation was complete. This was Vivian Hartwell as the world knew her. Other wedding guests were arriving, a parade of carefully curated success, but none of them carried themselves with the quiet confidence that came from actual wealth rather than its imitation. I walked through the Drake's glass doors, the sound of a string quartet drifting from the lobby. Near the entrance to the Gold Coast Ballroom, a polite but professional guard stood with an iPad guest list. Good afternoon, ma'am. Name, please. Vivian Hartwell. His finger scrolled down the screen, paused, then scrolled again. I'm sorry, ma'am, but I don't see that name on our registry. A few guests turned to stare at the well-dressed woman being denied entry. Whispers rippled through the small crowd. This was part of the plan, a public yet controlled disruption. There must be some mistake, I said, my voice carrying just enough to be overheard. I'm the groom's mother. The guard's expression softened with genuine sympathy, but his training held firm. I understand this is difficult, ma'am, but my instructions are very clear. Only guests on the approved list may enter. The humiliation, though staged, stung more than I'd expected. I stepped aside and pulled out my phone, speed dialing Bill Patterson. Bill, it's Vivian. I'm in your lobby, and there seems to be a misunderstanding about my access to the Morrison Hartwell wedding. Give me 30 seconds, he replied. True to his word, Bill appeared almost immediately, crossing the lobby with the measured urgency of a seasoned hotel executive. Mrs. Hartwell, my sincere apologies. Please follow me. He led me away from the main guest flow, through a discreet service corridor marked hotel personnel only. I understand this is a delicate family situation, Bill murmured as we walked. We'll get you inside without any further complications. The service route took us through the Drake's working heart, past the commercial kitchen, where a four-tiered wedding cake stood like a monument to Elena's ambitions. We reached a discreet door marked ballroom service. Bill's hand paused on the handle. Mrs. Hartwell, are you certain about this approach? I've tried conventional, Bill. This is my last chance to see if I was right about his choice. He nodded with understanding and opened the door. The grand ballroom took my breath away. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm light over 200 guests, and a live orchestra provided classical accompaniment. And there he was, Marcus, handsome in his tuxedo, standing beside Elena at an altar decorated with white roses. Even from my position at the ballroom's periphery, I could see his happiness, a joy that made him practically glow. The officiant was speaking. "You may now kiss the bride." Marcus lifted Elena's veil and kissed her with theatrical passion, performing for his audience. Applause erupted as my son officially became Marcus Morrison. I remained at the edge of the crowd, partially concealed by the service corridor entrance. As the recessional began, champagne appeared on silver trays, and congratulations flowed freely. Elena, basking in the attention, began scanning the crowd with obvious satisfaction. Her moment of triumph, her successful social climbing, validated by a ballroom full of witnesses. That's when her eyes found mine. Recognition hit her like a physical blow. The confident smile faltered, replaced by confusion, then dawning comprehension. The poor social worker she'd humiliated 3 weeks ago stood before her in a $5,000 suit, clearly belonging in this world of wealth and privilege. Our eyes locked across the ballroom, and I saw the exact moment Elena Morrison realized she'd made a terrible, terrible mistake. Elena's confident stride cut through the cocktail hour chatter like a blade, her designer dress perfectly pressed, her smile predatory, and her eyes locked on mine with growing fury. Wedding guests sipping champagne turned to watch, oblivious to the drama about to unfold. "What the hell are you doing here?" Elena's voice carried enough venom to stop conversations within a 10-foot radius. I remained perfectly still, hands clasped in front of me. The St. John suit felt like armor. "I believe this is my son's wedding." My voice was calm, measured, carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard. "Your son explicitly told you not to come." "Security." Elena spun around, looking for assistance. "This woman is trespassing." A small crowd began to form, their attention shifting from small talk to the unfolding spectacle. I recognized the type: Chicago's wealthy elite, people who fed on drama and social positioning. Elena's voice rose another octave. "This is Marcus's mother, the social worker I told you about. She's been banned from this wedding, and she's making a scene." The crowd pressed closer, smartphones emerging from designer clutches. That's when Michael Steinberg dropped his champagne glass. The crystal shattered against the marble floor with a sound that cut through the ballroom noise. Michael, a prominent tech investor and ironically Elena's ultimate boss, stood frozen, staring at me with dawning recognition. "Oh my God," he whispered, then louder, "Vivian Hartwell from Neurotech." Elena turned toward the voice, confusion replacing aggression. "What?" Michael pulled out his phone with trembling fingers, scrolling rapidly. Forbes magazine, Tech Visionary of the Year, Vivian Hartwell, founder and CEO of Neurotech AI. Net worth $2.3 billion. The crowd's murmur grew to a roar. More phones appeared, screens glowing, as guests began their own searches. "That's impossible," Elena stammered, her face draining of color. "She's a social worker. She drives a beat-up Toyota. From a penthouse that overlooks the lake I crossed to visit your family's home 3 weeks ago," I finished quietly. Elena's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. The search results were spreading like wildfire. Guests showed each other their screens, whispered confirmations, and recorded videos. The elegant wedding reception was transforming into something else entirely. "Please, Mrs. Hartwell." "Ma'am." Elena's hand shook as she reached for my arm. "There's been a terrible misunderstanding." I took a single step backward, maintaining my dignity as her desperation became apparent to everyone watching. "No misunderstanding, Elena. You showed me exactly who you are. The only question now is whether Marcus sees it too." Elena dropped to her knees on the marble floor, the glass shards from Michael's champagne flute surrounding her like fallen stars. "Please," she begged, her voice cracking. "I didn't know. If you had known I was wealthy," my voice carried across the ballroom, clear and final, "you would have treated me with respect. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." From across the room, I saw Marcus turning toward the commotion, his tuxedo crisp as he moved through the crowd. Michael Steinberg held his tablet high, the Forbes article clear for everyone to see. My photo stared back from the screen, confident, successful, the woman I actually was. "Look at this," Michael called to the growing crowd. "Vivian Hartwell, Neurotech founder, net worth $2.3 billion. Phones emerged from every direction. The quiet murmur of investigation grew louder with each confirmation. You wore a Target suit, Elena whispered, her voice carrying in the sudden hush. You drove a beat-up car. You said you were a social worker. I never said I was poor, Elena, I replied, adjusting my Cartier, a gesture noticed by several guests. You assumed that because of how I looked, you treated me with contempt because you thought I couldn't help your career. Patricia and Robert Morrison appeared at the edge of the crowd, their faces pale as they recognized the scope of the disaster. We didn't know, Patricia whispered to anyone who would listen. We had no idea who she was. Someone near the back announced, "Someone's coming." Through the parting guests, I saw Marcus approaching, his face a mask of confusion, then growing recognition as he saw me standing in the center of the commotion. Mom. His voice cut through the ballroom, noise like a knife through silk. The crowd fell completely silent. Even the string quartets stopped playing. Marcus stood at the edge of the circle, taking in the scene, his new wife on her knees amid broken glass, guests holding phones displaying my Forbes profile, and me standing calmly in the center of it all. Mom, what are you doing here? His voice was small, confused, but not angry. I looked at my son, handsome in his tuxedo, and felt my heart break and heal simultaneously. I came to see my son get married, I said simply, even if he didn't want me here. His eyes filled with tears as understanding washed over his face. It all clicked into place. You're not a social worker, he whispered. I never was, sweetheart. I just wanted to see what kind of woman you were marrying. The ballroom fell silent, except for the soft rustling of Marcus's movement as he stepped toward me, each step creating distance between him and Elena. I'm so sorry, Mom. The words came out in a rush. I should have listened. I should have trusted your judgment. My arms opened automatically as he reached me, and suddenly I was holding my son again, tuxedo and all. The expensive fabric crushed between us, but neither of us cared. I love you, I whispered. That's all that matters. After a moment, I gently stepped back and looked toward the wedding band. May I borrow your microphone? The band leader, sensing the moment's importance, quickly handed it over. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice carrying across the ballroom. I want to thank you for sharing this important day with my son Marcus. Despite some complications, this is still his wedding day, and he deserves to celebrate. Applause rippled through the crowd. Marcus squeezed my hand, tears still flowing, but his smile radiant. I also want to establish some new family ground rules. I looked directly at Elena, who had finally managed to stand. If Marcus has chosen to marry Elena Morrison, and I respect that decision. Elena nodded frantically, understanding she was being offered survival, not forgiveness. Marcus will always be welcome in my home. His wife will be tolerated when necessary, but only because Marcus loves her. I paused, letting the message sink in. Are we clear on these terms? Yes, ma'am, Elena managed, her voice barely audible. I handed the microphone back to the bandleader and turned to Marcus. Now, would you honor me with a dance? I'd love to, Mom. As we moved to the dance floor, the orchestra struck up a waltz. I guided Marcus through the steps. We'd practiced when he was 12 and still believed his mother was the smartest woman in the world. I really messed up, didn't I? He said quietly. You fell in love. That's not a mistake. I spun him gently, watching him smile through his tears. But maybe next time, trust your old mom's instincts about character. There won't be a next time. He laughed. I'm married now. Yes, you are. And despite everything, I hope you'll be happy. From the corner of my eye, I could see Elena watching us from the sidelines, her parents beside her looking shell-shocked. The Morrison family's social climbing had backfired spectacularly, but they would survive. Elena would remain married to Marcus, but on terms she never could have imagined. Will you really let her come to family dinners? Marcus asked. If you want her there, yes, but she sit at the children's table. Marcus's laughter filled the ballroom, pure and joyful. As the song ended, I kissed his forehead and smiled. Welcome to married life, sweetheart. Just remember, if she ever treats you badly, you know where to find me. I love you, Mom. I love you too. Now, go enjoy your reception. You're only going to have one wedding day. He returned to his new wife, who took his hand with obvious relief and gratitude. The celebration continued, but the power dynamics had shifted permanently. Jonathan would have been proud. True class had nothing to do with bank account balances. It had everything to do with character. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say, you were here.